You are listening to Arcane Carolinas, an exploration of the Carolinas' folklore, legends, myths, and modern weird. Each episode, we examine the historical context of our topic and aim to preserve some of the stories that help make this part of the world such a fascinating place.
Hi, this is Michael with Arcane Carolinas. Just wanted to give a little intro to this episode before we dive in. This is the audio from the live episode that we did at ConCarolinas in June of 2021, in case you happen to be listening to this way off in the future. Because it's our first live episode and the audio setup was a little bit different, then the audio will sound a little bit different, and I like that. I wanted to preserve the experience of having been in the room with us, the way that the folks at ConCarolinas got to be. It was a real privilege and a real honor to get to do that episode at ConCarolinas. Big shout out and thanks to ConCarolinas in general and to the Science and Media track and Jim Nettles in specific for giving us the chance to do this. We really enjoyed it. It was really fun to get to interact. There's a Q&A at the end. Because we use directional mics, then you can't really hear the questioners. So I've sort of stepped in those moments in this version of the panel and relay to you, the listener listening to this as a podcast episode, what the person in the audience was saying. And then we do a fun game playing with Zener cards. They're sort of a psychic test. Feel free, if you are somewhere safe, like you're not driving or you're not walking down the street or whatever, to play along and let's see what happens. I've read some interesting stuff about information being non-local in time, which means specifically that if you study a subject tomorrow, it is possible, some say, for information to travel backwards to you so that you'll do okay on a test about it today. I don't know if that's true. I'm just curious to see if anybody listening to this episode participates after the fact in the Zener card test, and if so, how you do. Send us an email at arcanecarolinas@gmail.com and let us know. And as always, thanks for listening.
That's why we work well together, right? Because one of us has to be all amazed at technology and just how does it work? And the other one actually has to work it.
Well, see, I feel like that's only fair because in literally every other recording session that we have ever done, you've had to say, Michael, is your microphone on?
Is your microphone on? Yeah. So are we okay to go?
Oh yeah, I'm just here to harass you guys.
Okay.
So just as a quick intro, I am Jim Nettles. I'm your science and tech track. Or was this new media? Did I make this new?
Science and tech.
Okay, this is Science and Tech. The Science and Tech track. I am the director. And I am pleased because Michael said, hey, we want to do a live podcast. Can we do a live podcast? Sure. 10:30. 10:30. That's past our bedtime.
That is definitely past my bedtime.
So, I'm proud to be able to deliver past their bedtimes because God only knows what will happen. Arcane Carolinas.
Thank you. Are you making drinks?
I am making drinks. Hey. I didn't know to anticipate your presence. That's true.
I didn't know you were doing that. So this is empty, so now I need one.
All right. Well, there you go. Well, I don't roll simple times, so I hope you like Manhattans.
That'll work.
And I hope you like rye.
I do.
Excellent.
Okay. So while Michael's making drinks, we are Arcane Carolinas. I know there's some people that have never seen us before. I am your co-host, man currently full of tacos and beer, Charlie Mushaw.
I'm your co-host, award-winning novelist, Michael G. Williams.
And we are really thrilled to be here tonight at our very first ConCarolinas as Arcane Carolinas.
Also our very first actual live in-person recording where we're not on Zoom.
Yeah, because we started this a year ago over the internet because we knew each other before this and worked together in person on a different show. But this idea came up during pandemic, so this is the first time we get to hang out and do it.
Yeah, it's really weird.
And we picked a topic for tonight that is near and dear to my heart that I've wanted to do since we started, which people snicker at every time I bring it up, and I don't care because it's awesome, and that is goblins.
Woo!
Like little creatures. A lot of what we do is we focus on folklore, myths, legends, modern weird in the Carolinas, both north and south. Tonight's story will probably, I have a couple in here depending on where we're at on the clock. When we get to my segment, I think I know which one I'm going to go with.
I promise I do not have 45 minutes of historical notes.
I don't believe you.
I know you are wise not to believe me. Also, I'm just going to note that these are homemade brandied cherries.
Ooh, you're fancy.
I am. It's pride.
I will drink these brandy cherries out of solidarity.
Thank you. Yes. These can be your ally cherries.
I'll have you know that I brushed my teeth.
Yeah, thank you very much. That is greatly appreciated.
I'm very, very in and being supportive.
Countless times we have been setting up to record, and I've said to Charlie, I'm sorry, we just have to wait. I need to go brush my teeth.
And
I don't know. I'm going to be on Zoom. Somebody's going to be looking directly at my mouth. People are going to be listening to me. That's very weird.
Cheers.
Yeah, cheers.
Cheers, everybody. Cheers. That's good.
Oh, that is a good Manhattan.
I will savor that one. I will
that.
not do to that what I did to my cheap light beer.
I'm going to warn you that it's bottled in Bond Dry, so it's extra strength.
I will definitely take my time. All right.
There you go.
The way our episodes are usually formatted is there's a little bit of a history lesson at the beginning, and then we sort of examine an example of the topic. Tonight's topic being goblins. Michael, being the more mystical of the two of us, will walk us through the taxonomy of goblins.
So, basically there are two axes of goblins. Imagine an XY graph. And I even drew a convenient XY graph to show people. And basically the two axes of the XY graph are human aligned or nature aligned. And are they helpful or harmful? So I'm going to run down one example from each of the possible combinations. And they're going to be relevant to what we talk about as stories from the Carolinas. The first being hobgoblins. Hob is a diminutive historically of Robert or Robin, and originally led to or came from, nobody's really sure, the idea that like helpful and slightly mischievous household spirits would be referred to as Robin Goodfellow.
Wait, so Rob?
Rob.
Like Robert?
Yeah.
Bob?
Hob.
Like Bob Goblin?
Like Bob Goblin, yes.
That's his first name. Hobgoblin is the title, Bob is the name, so it's Bob Goblin, Hobgoblin.
You know that there's a Bob I'm thinking of right now, and it's really funny to me. I'm just going to say that.
I know that Bob.
You do know that Bob.
I do know that Bob. He is goblin-y.
He is goblin-y. He's more like a troll. Anyway, oh gosh, I might edit that part out. Oh, I can't. We're live.
Sorry, Bob.
So, okay, thank you. So, hobgoblins are bobgoblins are mostly helpful house spirits. Sometimes they're mischievous. They are especially mischievous historically towards clergy, which I feel like is probably
That's
true.
Bob.
That's Bob. And linguistically and culturally, hobgoblins are related to pixies, kobolds, and that sort of thing. It's interesting to me. There's like some really lengthy, that I won't go into, I promise, linguistic shift from the word pixie to the word goblin. And puck, as in Midsummer Night's Dream puck, linguistically and culturally related to hobgoblins. And a traditional term in some parts of the UK for what we call a hobgoblin is a dobby. So, if you ever
Like
wonder where...
the thing.
Like the thing.
Is that from Harry Potter too?
Yes, it is.
This is like the third Harry Potter thing today that I'm like, I kind of know what
are
it
at
is.
a con, you know.
And somebody was like, what house are you? And I'm like, I don't know.
And then a whole discussion ensued.
And then a whole discussion ensued. And
we
people told
diagnosed
me-
him.
Yeah, diagnosed.
We
yeah.
sorted you.
Yeah, so not part of my fandom.
No. But like, if you ever wonder where J.K. Rowling got all of her stuff, it's from that. Other people. I am not nice. I write horror. I don't have to be nice. Interestingly to me, hobgoblins are normally associated with a home, as in a dwelling.
Okay.
But sometimes in folklore they are attached to families and would follow a family from one house to the next,
God,
being
no.
mischievous,
No.
especially around their kids, which
No.
all said to me, poltergeist.
Yeah. I don't like the idea of, okay.
I know you don't like poltergeists, but I had to
No.
get that in there.
Okay.
That is an example of a spirit that is mostly helpful and strongly human aligned. Next are going to be Tommyknockers or blue caps. They are helpful and nature aligned. They live in mines, which are human spaces, but Tommyknockers had their own parts of the mines where miners would not go. And they had to throw them parts of meat pies to keep them happy, which I think is really fun. They were like parts of the mine where you'd go like throw part of your lunch.
Meat pie.
Yeah. And they would knock on walls to signify the impending collapse of
Hence
a mine.
the name
Tommyknockers.
Tommyknocker.
In some parts of England, they were referred to as blue caps because it was believed that they would manifest as a blue flame that would lead you away from the bad part
Distinctly
of the mind.
different than red caps.
Very different from red caps.
Yes.
They did not kill you. They tried to not kill you.
We talk about red caps in our Little Red Man of Winston-Salem episode of our podcast. So if you want to know what we're talking about and you're like, what are they blathering about? Who is Bob? You will not learn who Bob is.
No.
But you will learn about red caps.
You will. Like, there's a ton of mining in North Carolina. And so I was curious as to whether or not the Tommyknockers was a tradition that had been brought here by Scotch-Irish settlers.
Mm-hmm.
It turns out, no, it is distinctly Cornish, and it's like Pennsylvania and Idaho are the places where you can find American Tommyknocker legends. Yeah, it's interesting to me. Then, in the harmful, nature-aligned quadrant, we have puka, which were originally Irish. That is a legend that was very much brought to the Carolinas by Scotch-Irish settlers. They would shapeshift into animals. They're also linguistically and culturally a relative of the concept of pixies. Puka, pixie. You've got some consonants in common there.
There's a kid's show called Puka.
And well, so these days they get sort of framed as like nice, but in the old days they would turn into horrible animals and kill you.
I'm not going to let my kids watch Puka anymore.
Well, there you go. We have lots and lots and lots of malicious shapeshifter legends in the Carolinas, including the fact that pukas, traditionally in Ireland, one of the things that they were most commonly considered to manifest as was big black dogs with glowing red eyes. And so the demon dog of Alicrucis, which we're going to talk about eventually,
Could be Puka.
it could be a puka.
See, that demon dog is so much scarier than Puka. Oh, Puka.
And
Aw. It's just a little Puka.
it's a little Winnie the Puka.
Winnie the Puka.
Winnie the Puka, whose mouth opens and is full of slavering
Just jaw
fangs.
unhinges.
Yes, exactly. Just like, and then he like belches and a little shoe pops out. They are also strongly similar to the Cherokee legend of Spearfinger, who was a malicious spirit one of whose fingers was like long and bony and could be used to pick people's livers out. And
It's very specific.
it is
Oddly
a
specific.
very specific. And she would shapeshift into animals in order to entrap children and eat their livers.
I don't like that one.
Then, in the harmful human-aligned quadrant, my last one,
Okay.
there are and I say this with a T, the trow.
Trow.
They were mound dwellers. They're found in a bunch of European traditions. Linguistically, strongly related to the word troll.
Ah, I see what you did there.
They were invisible at night, was part of the legend, and they would sneak into homes, steal valuables, line their mounds with these stolen valuables so that their mounds were supposed to be full of ill-gotten riches. But they were also especially drawn to kidnap musicians and take them into their mounds and force them to play. And that's also where we get the word drow from D&D.
Yeah. I mean, all of this stuff ties into D&D. I have some notes on another page or two in where we're going to talk a little bit about pop culture. Oh, we are to my section.
Yes, we are.
Oh, look at that.
There's my tidy handoff, and I took not 45 minutes.
Wow, that is the fastest you've ever gone. Do you have anything that you wanted to review that you
No,
didn't
I'm good.
get to? Do you
I've
wanna
got
go
notes in the rest of it. Don't worry.
Okay. So I wanted to take a minute to note the differences in popular culture and stories that we see on TV and in movies and in games about creatures that could be construed as goblins, leading with, before we get into the pop culture, the UFO and cryptid like cross-section on the Venn diagram of like weird stuff, where specifically the Kelly Hopkinsville encounter, which is sometimes described as the Kentucky Goblins, where there was this family and they claimed a close encounter with aliens or goblins, and they weren't really sure what at the time. It was later they went with the UFO story. Little creatures, 2 to 4 feet tall, and the details that the family provided were large pointed ears, claw-like hands, eyes that glowed yellow, and spindly legs. Allegedly, these creatures had them trapped in their farmhouse for a whole night and continued looking in the windows, and they started shooting out of the house at the windows.
That's what you do, I guess.
So
Yeah, Kentucky.
So this story is well documented, and some people will hold it up as like, this is like a true believer moment, and I have angered the goblins. And they're
Yes.
slamming doors. I'm mocking them. And to be clear, we talk a little bit on our show about what we think is feasible and what we think is not feasible, and I am not willing to rule out intelligent life from another planet or another dimension. That's where I'm at on the spectrum. I think they're full. We're live, aren't we?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll watch my language. I think they are not being entirely truthful with what they experienced that night.
What? Are you saying they might have said some stuff to get attention?
Yeah, also there's stories that the adults in the family were all highly intoxicated. And it was basically just like they all just kept ramping each other up and just shooting stuff.
I'm guessing that it's kind of the moonshine equivalent of the meth lab exploded.
Yes.
And
everybody got all riled up. So yeah, it's very widely documented, the case. The family skipped town shortly afterwards. They were somewhat transient, and no authorities were able to back anything up other than, there were bullet holes everywhere.
I will note, however, that in their story, they did say that occasionally when they would try to pursue the goblins, they would turn invisible. And the physical description that you gave is a perfect match for the tradition of Trow, who are hostile and attack at night. I'm just going to say,
all right.
I'm going to put it out there.
Hello, dum-dums.
Right. I'm going to put it out there. They could be Trow.
They could be.
I'm just saying.
All right. So I just wanted to acknowledge on the Venn diagram of cryptids, UFOs, and fae creatures where goblins do have this one instance of sort of like being nestled in there in popular culture. But let's get into like pure pop culture stuff here, because this is where I get a huge kick out of goblins. They are one of my favorite fantasy creatures. In Magic the Gathering, one of my favorite cards of all time is called Goblin Grenade, where it's a goblin with like a stick of dynamite, and you just like throw it at the other guy, and it blows up and does a bunch of damage. And I love that card. It's one of my favorite cards from all the years of playing Magic. They're generally depicted as being quite disposable in that game, as opposed to Pathfinder, which made them kind of cute. And you've all seen, I'm sure, Pathfinder goblin merchandise.
Oh, yeah.
Little plushes, and they got a lot of mileage out of the art for them. They tend to be, this is from their source material, they tend to be 3 feet tall, large flat heads, long ears. Skin is leathery and gray, often wrinkled, covered in tiny scars, warts, and scabs. So very attractive. They grow little, if any, hair, relying on their thick skin and huddling together in groups to keep warm. So just like all these little like...
Aww. They're like weird, mean little puppies.
Right. They have small, beady red eyes set close together over a little pug nose and a hideously wide mouth lined with little sharp teeth.
Eesh.
And a fun fact from Pathfinder lore is that they have a pathological fear and hatred of horses and dogs.
Okay.
I didn't know that.
That's fun.
I don't play Pathfinder. I'm a D&D guy, which I know you are like D&D's good for like 5 minutes. But
yeah, I did prefer Pathfinder, but...
So the D&D goblin is very, very different. Even in its illustrations, they just look totally different. Those are considered weak humanoid monsters, 3 to 3.5 feet tall, weigh 40 to 45 pounds, and there are a bajillion different varieties over the decades of D&D source material.
I think it's worth noting that hobgoblins, which started out in folklore as helpful and mischievous house spirits, in D&D are 6'6" trained evil fighters.
Mm-hmm. You know, D&D isn't the gospel. It's just a
Nope.
game. It's just a game.
Nope.
There's David Bowie.
Right.
David, king of the goblins, who coincidentally, one of my cousins named their kid after that character, which is fun.
I think that's so great. I hope
It's something.
I hope that child grows
Is that a
up.
family name? No. What's it?
I bet that child's going to have an interesting life.
I think they already have. So, Jareth, the king of the goblins from Labyrinth, is a shape-shifting magical being that can appear as an owl or David Bowie. Those are the two options that you have.
Those are both pretty good options, if you ask me.
So that's in the movie. In the movie, he can turn into an owl at will and uses that form to travel into the human world. He can manipulate crystal balls with his hands. He can appear and disappear in his realm as he wishes, appears to have telepathic abilities. He's able to defy gravity, running upside down at one point.
Yeah.
It's Ziggy Stardust. There are spin-off works that expand on the lore around that character, saying that he's not a goblin, he's a human, but somehow got powers. I don't know. I didn't read the spin-offs because I don't care.
Yeah.
So, let's establish the general trends.
Sure. A lot of goblin-type creatures historically were seen as like these folk spirits. But then over the course of the 17th, 18th, and especially into the 18th and 19th centuries, and I'm not saying this is a judgment against that religion, but Christianity tended to have a way of viewing everything through the lens of its own beliefs and sort of trying to find a way to stratify everything in its own cosmology. And so a lot of these spirits just got drafted into service as demons. And they just get labeled as evil.
Picture the little huddle of goblins.
Right.
Your demons now. And then they just put on a different shirt and shuffle off. And they're just it's like, we got traded. We're on a different team.
Exactly. New Jersey's same rules.
Exactly.
To the point that Robin Goodfellow in the 15th and 16th centuries wasn't just a character, it was a type of creature. People would refer to the Robin Goodfellow that was in their house.
Ah, yes, my Bob the Hob.
my Bob the Hob. And God, that is, I wish he were here and I could say that to his face. But by the
I don't.
I don't actually. By the 19th century, Robin Goodfellow is explicitly another name for the devil, for Satan.
What?
Yeah.
Satan, brought to you by Robin Goodfellow.
Right. And hobgoblins and pixies and drow and goblins and kobolds, all of them culturally and linguistically related across a whole bunch of different peoples and parts of Europe. They all wind up very distinct monsters in fantasy fiction, in part because Christian cosmology needed to stratify them as different kinds of things in its view of what folklore was really talking about.
Okay.
That's the general trend.
So they shipped them all off.
Yeah.
They're all demons now.
Exactly. Some of them got promotions.
We're bringing back
some of them
goblins,
did
all
not.
right? All right? You're back on the team. Come on. Let's get weird. So for the sake of this talk, when I talk about goblin sightings in the Carolinas, we're going to go with small humanoid creatures.
Sure.
We're going to keep it real general.
They're not 6'6" warriors in studded leather.
No, they are not hellspawn.
Okay.
They are, that I know of from the stories that I read, they're more like woodland things.
Yeah.
Looking at the clock, I am going to go with, I had a couple lined up. I am going to go with one that is closest to our physical location here, which is from Rocky River, does anybody know where Rocky River is? Sweet. Yeah, so it's right near here. I Google mapped it. It's about a 20-minute drive due east of this hotel to where the story takes place. It's technically a part of the Uwharrie mountain range, which is the oldest mountain range in North America. And oddly, there are several references to the Uwharries being home to goblins on the internet. Some of them are more sensational than others. Some are definitely creepypasta that you're just
right.
Somebody put this on 4chan.
Somebody's fanficking their own life.
Right.
Yeah.
But the one that I picked comes from a dude named Fred T. Morgan, and we will get into Fred in a minute. But I want to acknowledge that as being the oldest mountain range in North America, the Uwharries used to be on the coast.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'll note, I didn't read this part of the notes at all because I wanted to be surprised.
Okay. So tectonic shifts have moved the mountain range from the coast inland and shrunk it way down.
Oh, okay.
So now we have what are now the Uwharrie Mountains, which are a series of hills.
Yeah.
But home to all sorts of weird ghost stories, goblin stories, witch tales. A lot of weird folklore comes out of the Uwharries, and I like to think it's because they're these ancient old mountains that have been around forever and seen some stuff.
Totally, that works for me.
So Fred Morgan was a very respected journalist. He was the 34-year feature editor for the Stanley News and Press. He was well known in the community. He traveled all across the state with a focus on the Uwharries, gathering folklore through oral tradition and word of mouth. He would seek people out and say, tell me your weird stories, and he would write them down. He wrote several books. The first one was published, I think, in the 60s. The one that I found this story in was published in the 80s, and he stated that this was actually collected earlier, but some of the stories were just kind of too far out there for the 60s,
okay.
So he sat on them.
Wow. Jeez.
So, Rocky River area, due east. This account was according to a man named Leland Gaddy, who stated that while traveling by horse-drawn buggy down Rocky River Road, near what was known at the time as the Squeaky Pines, two giant old pine trees that were named such as they made noise as they swayed in the wind. And, if you've ever been around pine trees in a storm,
yeah,
they squeak. So, Squeaky Pines on Rocky River Road. Leland said that he saw a spectral man hanging from one of the branches of the pines. This disturbed Leland.
I would imagine so.
He had never seen such a thing. So he stops his buggy and is just like, I got to look at this. And when he stops, a squat, hair-covered, toothy creature with human eyes suddenly jumps up on the front of his buggy and in a guttural voice asks, "Are you passing the Squeaky Pines?"
What?
Yeah. Right. Leland has never seen such a thing.
He doesn't see that all the time?
No. So he freaks out and he like tries to crack the whip at it, and it goes through it.
Oh.
It just goes,
Yeah.
as if it were a cartoon ghost.
Spectral.
Spectral, yes. Didn't hit. And then two more hop out, and they jump on the bench like next to him, and they're like, "Don't go past the Squeaky Pines."
What?
Yeah. So he goes, "Ah!" and takes off down a side road. Like the Squeaky Pines sit at a split.
Okay.
And the side road is actually not a proper road. It's not Rocky River Road. It was, if you didn't know, the Uwharries were actually completely cleared. The Uwharrie forest and mountains were clear cut. And it was during the Roosevelt administration, some sort of preservation act got passed, which is why we now have the Uwharrie National Forest.
Oh.
So it would make sense that, there was like a farm road. So he took off down the farm road and freaks out and is just like, what the hell? Doesn't like it. The next person to allegedly have seen this, so they all start talking, it's a small community at the time, is a fella named Wilson Seacrest. This individual states that he saw the hanging man, did not see goblins. He saw 3 women in black shrouds come out of the woods.
Well, that's got big Brides of Dracula vibes.
And they told him to drive on.
Oh, they were like, yeah, go past the Squeaky Pines.
Yes, exactly.
Oh.
And he was like, "Ah!" and takes off down the side road.
That's funny.
So then, the next part of the legend, there's like no details. There's no names. It gets really squishy at this part, which, I like to rip that apart.
Yeah.
I get kind of mean when they get squishy on details. Some unknown person drove past the Squeaky Pines and met a terrible demise in a crash around the bend.
Okay.
And from that point on, passerbys would see 2 spectral men hanging in the tree.
I do like that detail,
Yeah,
but
it's
the
cool.
fact that nobody knows who that was or has recorded it. Oh, we've recorded everything else about it, but that
Right.
part's not important.
Right.
you know?
No, there was totally 2. We definitely have the first 2 guys that reported it, but the third guy, the one that died that we buried, no, we don't know who that was. So, the wheels come off a little bit at that
Yeah.
point.
Either there was never a guy or they killed somebody.
Right. It's Squeaky Pines, you guys. No, don't go past. So the word gets out. There's little goblins that live in the woods or live along the road, and they'll hop out by the trees, and they'll warn you not to go past the Squeaky Pines. They're trying to protect you from the 3 women who are ushering you to your doom, to harvest your soul or whatever. So people stop using this road, basically.
I mean, who can blame them?
Yeah, word travels fast in the small community, and they're like, well, we don't have to go that way.
Yeah.
Until things come to a head one night when a doctor is needed to assist with an emergency childbirth that is going wrong.
Oh.
The doctor says, "Witches be damned, I'm going past the Squeaky Pines," because they were labeled as witches in the community.
That's, that's sort of the lowest common denominator.
Right.
Yeah.
So he's going at a completely unreasonable speed because he doesn't. because
I imagine him just flying past the little troll goblin dudes who are and they just get bowled over and they're just lying in the ditch
So the goblins jump on it and they're like, "Don't do it, don't do it, oh my god, no." And he's like, "Ah!" And then the witches come out and they're like, "Oh!" And he's like, "Ah!" And he goes past it and there's an explosion of fire and lightning and the trees fall and he somehow makes it to deliver the child. And that was the end of the Squeaky Pines.
Oh gosh, so the trees are gone.
Trees are gone. So the next day, apparently, some people went out. He told everybody the next day. He was like, "I saw some crazy stuff." And we're live. Thinking of the kids.
We're
Thinking
live.
of the kids. They go there, and allegedly they see 3 crows sitting on the fallen pines.
Oh, I love that part of it too.
That's the end of the story.
Okay.
So
That works though. That's pretty great.
It's cool. It's cool. Goblins in the Uwharries. You want me to do my thing now?
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to do my thing.
I will say, I do love it as a story.
It's a great story.
Yeah.
The local theories that were
Okay.
proposed that Fred Morgan collected from the locals are that the women were believed to be the sisters of a plantation owner that was particularly cruel. And after murdering a slave, there was an uprising and they hung him.
Who can blame them?
And yeah.
Good on them, I say.
Yeah. And that does align with land having been clear cut and there being large plantations and farms
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So I'm like, okay, that unfortunately that's about as concrete as we can get.
Oh, okay.
So it's a real place. Like Rocky River Road is a real road. You know, it's Rocky River is a real area. The Leland name, I found that guy.
Yeah.
The Seacrest guy, could not find him.
Oh, well, okay.
And so I'm batting 500 is amazing in baseball. When you're fact checking a story, it's not good.
Yeah.
But that said, I was able to determine that there was a fire in 1875 that at the Cabarrus Courthouse that burnt up that held a lot of birth, death, and land records. So I'm not willing to write off that Seacrest didn't exist.
So there's room to believe.
There's room to believe.
It's sold then.
You're in. I know you're in.
I'm in.
Goblins are like,
I'm going to go look for 3 crows and make friends.
I mean, we can. It's 20 minutes away. Some kind of far out theories, and this is where I get into my world of thinking. This is where I'm going to separate.
Yeah.
I'm just pure speculation, and I am not encouraging people to do drugs. But DMT, ayahuasca. One of the main things that people say is that they see little goblin-y creatures.
Yeah, that's a really common report with those substances.
Right. And it's thought that people, human beings, can organically create those compounds within their brain. And what's it, the pineal gland?
Well, I've never used it, and I'm not an expert, and I'm definitely not a pharmacist. But my understanding is that basically those substances provoke a sudden rush of a bunch of brain chemicals that can induce these states.
So what if one of these dudes had an experience and he really thought it, he really did see like,
right?
You know what I mean? Like, what if?
Yeah, why not? Why not believe
and then
that?
somebody else was just like, yeah, me too.
What if he had like a bunch of dirt on Seacrest and was like, you got to back me up?
Right, see? I'd buy that.
You never know. Also, am I wrong to think that his description of goblins could potentially sound like baby Bigfoots?
You're not wrong, but
I just immediately...
Do you remember the honeycomb commercials from the 90s with the little thing with like hand? Yeah, that's what I'm picturing. Like big bug eyes and just like a crackhead for honeycomb. it's just like I don't know. We'll when we post this online, we'll put it in the show notes.
Please do.
That's what I'm picturing, which is basically like a puff ball with like hands and feet and like a little face in the middle.
Oh, whoa. Okay. I'm picturing baby Bigfoots.
Okay.
I'm picturing like the
like
little
Chaka.
kid, the little kitty.
How many times can I reference
special?
Chaka in this show?
Yes.
This is at least the 3rd or 4th Chaka reference.
But you're not wrong.
Another far out theory that I'm going to go with, and I hate to invoke Tom DeLonge because every time I do, somebody gives me crap about it. But in a 2018 interview, Tom DeLonge let slip that some of the government folks he had been talking to clued him into crypto-terrestrials.
Okay. I'm the believer, and I'm like, yeah.
Listen, I got a soft spot for Tom DeLonge, so I'm just putting it out there that he might have an explanation. Maybe we should call him.
Let's call him. Yeah.
Everybody else quit his company, so he might be around.
He might answer the phone.
Right. So that's it on Goblins in the Uwharries. We do have some other stuff that we want to do this evening.
Yeah.
Do you want to get to that?
Sure.
Do you want to postulate any stuff on goblins?
So I do actually love the crypto-terrestrial angle. Mm-hmm. I love the what John Keel referred to as ultra-terrestrials. You know, I love the idea that they're these sort of interdimensional creatures. And
do you love all the small things?
What?
I don't know. It's a Blink-182 reference. Tom DeLonge. That did not work because they're little.
I am old. I am 700 years old.
That song is old.
Okay. Well, apparently one of us is too old for the other. Me or that song. Okay. But I will say, before you do that, sorry, because I was going to say that I love the ultra-terrestrial theory. And I love the idea that there are other things that are just sort of sideways from us in the universe, and they have the ability to come over here and mess with us. I love the idea of trickster spirits. I love the idea that trickster spirits might be everything that we're talking about. They might be Bigfoot, they might be UFOs. There's a guy in Pennsylvania who made a whole career out of writing books about just UFOs and Bigfoot sightings that coincide. Those are a real thing in terms of, like they're a real deal in terms of like that's a big theme. And it's like, why would UFOs and Bigfoot be associated with each other? I love the idea that all of this is just it's the modern day version of the fairy ring.
Yeah.
You know, it's the thing that we shouldn't drink the drink and we shouldn't eat the food. It's the thing that comes in the night and takes us away and shows us weird stuff and replaces our kids with weird little things that are not our kids but look just like them. I don't know. I love all that stuff, and I love the idea that all of that kind of comes from one source that we are not capable yet of understanding.
And that's why you close out the episodes.
Oh, well, thank you.
Because I'm like, yeah, that's cool. Goblins. I don't know. I got a kick out of it. When I first started looking into goblin sightings in the Carolinas, I didn't think I'd find anything. And then all of a sudden they're like, there's goblins in the Uwharries. And I'm like, get out of here. And I'm like, oh, this is like really a thing. Like, people really like talking about this.
And like we had talked about the Uwharries with the, what's his face? The
Hunter.
Yeah, the Hunter.
Yeah. Purgatory Mountain.
Purgatory Mountain.
Purgatory Mountain's creepy.
I would really love to go there. It's shocking to me that the Uwharries are a recent development, relatively, because they're also the home to the most difficult and longest trail race in North Carolina. You can run a 20-mile trail race in the Uwharries that is reportedly exceptionally difficult.
I mean, 20 miles, anything is hard.
Yeah. So, how about you explain the Zinner cards?
Zinner cards! This is something that we really enjoy doing. In the first issue of our zine, we sent out DIY Zinner cards. Zinner cards are can I hold them?
Yeah, go for it.
These jobbies, where they have the different symbols. It's for testing for telekinesis. If you've ever seen the 1984 original Ghostbusters, these are the cards that Peter Venkman is using on the graduate students as part of an experiment where he's like, you're getting paid, aren't you? When he's shocking the kid and trying to ask the girl out on a date. So these were developed actually right here in North Carolina by Dr. Zenner and Dr. J.B. Morgan. No, Ryan, J.B. Ryan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Ryan.
Ryan.
Okay. Yeah.
J.B. Ryan and Dr. Zenner as a way of testing for extrasensory perception. And we are going to do a fun audience participation. There's supposed to be a poll where I would show how you were voting, but we're going to try to do a collective consciousness thing here and see if we can guess some cards. But we're going to do it by show of hands because I know you can't see that. Because I can't see that.
Since they don't have to see it, I'm going to suggest, as the believer, that they close their eyes when they visualize what they think is on the card, because then it is easier to focus their mind.
All right. This is not hypnosis. We're not trying to get you to close your eyes so we can steal your wallets or anything. This is all above board, I assure you. Which is exactly what somebody that was trying to scam you would say. So that's not really reassuring, is it? So these are the symbols that you're going to want to think of when we ask you what you're visualizing. A star, a square, a little plus sign, cross jobby, a circle, or 3 wavy lines. So I guess what we'll do is we'll shuffle these, we'll draw a card, and we'll do by show of hands.
Yeah.
By
We'll name each one.
all right. Here,
And
I'll
then
set
raise your
these
hand
up.
if that's what you visualized.
All right, and we'll be quick about this, and then we'll get to the raffle, and we'll start giving some stuff away. And if you're watching on the internet,
Yeah, FYI, we are... Oh, I'm so glad, Vanessa, that you're nerding out on this. But, oh, hey, Mary. People I know are watching us do this live thing.
they can participate too.
Yeah, comment, because we can actually see the comments.
Don't look at the cards,
Don't look at the cards. That's right.
cheaters.
So, everybody, close your eyes and list the shapes again.
Circle, plus sign, star, wavy lines, square.
Now, take 5 seconds and just see which of those appears in your mind.
Raise your hand if you see a square. Raise your hand if you see a wavy line. Raise your hand if you see a plus sign. And raise your hand if you see a circle. All right. We're going to do another one.
Just show them?
No.
Okay.
Let's do 2.
Yeah, no problem.
And then we'll... All right. Same deal. Gonna take a couple seconds. Raise your hand if you see a square. Raise your hand if you see wavy lines. Raise your hand if you see a star. Raise your hand if you see a plus sign. Raise your hand if you see a circle. Demi, do you want to do
one
Do you
more?
want to do one more? All right, we'll do one more. Raise your hand if you see a square. Wavy lines. Star. Plus sign. Circle. All right. So, the first 2, one person in the room got each.
Yeah, the first one was a circle. The second one was a plus sign.
And the third one, nobody got.
It was a square.
So, full disclosure, no one has ever been able to replicate Dr. Ryan's tests with these cards in a lab. It's really cool, and I really like the Ryans as far as researchers, J.B. Ryan and his wife, Louie. And that was, very, very shallow as far as experiments go. But it's fun, and it's something that we enjoy doing.
It is super fun.
Yeah.
And if you're into this sort of thing, the Stanford Research Institute, or now known as SRA International, has developed an app called ESP Trainer, in which you are asked to basically press one of 4 color-coded boxes, almost like a Simon Says game. Mm-hmm. The idea being that if you do this enough times, then you will eventually get good at predicting which one the app is going to light up. They claim that repeated use of this has increased efficacy past statistical significance.
That's cool.
I don't know.
I mean, I don't know. I think it's cool.
I think it's awesome.
All right. So once again, we were Arcane Carolinas. Check us out at arcanecarolinas.com. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Full disclosure, we are most active on Instagram and Facebook. So if you send us something on Twitter, we probably won't see it right away. Next month, we will be at Congregate in Winston-Salem. And now let's get to the giveaways. There's free swag for everybody over there by that big white box. There's copies of our zine. There's stickers that we held back specifically for the convention with the cat on them because of the logo for the con. We were like, oh, let's do the cat.
Yeah.
So check that out. There's buttons. That's all we had.
Yeah, we're done. We're even done early. Does anybody have any questions? At this point, there was a question, but the audio doesn't really pick up, so let me summarize. Somebody in the audience asked, what did we think of the ways that legends from Native American tribes and settlers and slaves and all the other peoples who populate the Carolinas and historically populated the Carolinas sort of merged together over time? There's so much about... I'm not Cherokee and I'm not an expert in Cherokee legends, and so I don't want to represent myself as an expert. But everything that I read, there's so much that's like, oh, that's a little bit this and a little bit that. And one of the things that I would be really fascinated to know more about is how much of our understanding of Cherokee legend is a result of settlers mixing their own folklore in with what they heard or thought they heard from Cherokee and things like that. We have an episode that's... that we just released that's about the supposed legend of the Moon-Eyed people and the cultural trend of white people's belief in the concept of Welsh Indians. And,
beautiful people.
And, right. And it was really fascinating to see the ways that arrivals would try to turn everything towards their worldview. I mean, that's human nature. The person then went on to point out that the Cherokee legend of the Nunahi in many ways is almost identical to European legends of the Fae. Yeah, and the legends of the Nunahi are so fascinating. And the idea of helpful spirits that will show up and even fight a fight for you if they need to. They're almost the opposite of Fae legends in that there's nothing really malicious about them.
They're like bobs.
They're like bobs.
They're bobs. They're just a bunch of bobs.
Just a bunch of bobs.
Yeah. Woodland bobs.
Woodland bobs.
Prairie bobs. Mountain bobs.
There you go. And then there's the legend of the little people, which, as far as I can tell, there's not a lot about them that is verifiably from the Cherokee. And that's one of the things for me is if I'm going to talk about a Cherokee legend, I want to make sure I'm actually representing the Cherokee belief. The person from the audience then made the observation that in a lot of these cases also, the only sources that we really have that claim to be historical are written down by white people and may not actually reflect Native American beliefs. Exactly. So much of this, even the best, most neutral accounts, wind up being 100 years ago, somebody wrote down that somebody had written down 100 years before that somebody had told them that their grandmother saw, And at that point, it's gosh, this is 300 years of attenuation in the signal.
Damn it, Leland saw Goblins. Well, don't take this from me.
But that's the thing. I was saying to Charlie just last week, I feel like I'm so often the debunker in stories like this, and I don't want to be. I want to be the believer. Like, I want to believe.
When we started this, I thought I was going to be the debunker. And then what happens is I wind up going into historical records and being like, oh, this person really existed.
Yeah, so much of the time it's that Charlie's like, no, this person is totally real. This is completely 100% believable. And I am just floored because I want to believe so badly that I am going to look for reasons that it can be disproven before somebody can disprove it for me. At this point, a different member of the audience pointed out that it's interesting that Charlie found stories of goblins in the Uwharries instead of in the Appalachians, when the Appalachians are the part of the state most heavily settled by specific groups of European arrivals who brought legends like that from Scotland and Ireland. Exactly. That whole thing about there's a legend. We're going to do an episode about it called the Demon Dog of Valley Cruces. If you're not familiar, it's kind of all right there in the title to some degree. But there are some
dog, it's a demon.
It's a dog. It's a demon. It's in Valley Cruces. But there are some really fascinating accounts by people who say that they've seen it. And it is very much in a place that was populated. It was settled in terms of colonial settlers almost entirely by Scotch-Irish immigrants. And there you go, Puka. Right there.
Winnie the Pooh. I was surprised to find anything, and I wanted to save it for a live one because it is kind of weird.
But it's so fun.
It is fun because they're cute. Well, they're horrifically cute. I don't know. I come from... Listen, man.
If something saved me from getting past the Whistling Pines or whatever.
Ghoulies, gremlins, critters.
Yes.
That whole era of little... So what?
The dog.
I was naming movies.
Right.
Sorry.
You're naming 80s movies.
Yeah. But like that era of little creature movies, man. Like I love those movies.
I love the way that cryptids tend to go through like phases of being in fashion and out of fashion. And that like goblin-y era of the 80s is totally one of my favorites. Great movies. Mm-hmm. I was one of those kids whose mom took him to see Gremlins, and then she wrote an angry letter to somebody afterwards.
This was not a Christmas movie.
It was not a Christmas movie. That is actually my mother as soon as we got to the car, she was like, that movie was not about Christmas.
Cool. I'm going to stop the recording now.
Okay. That is how almost every episode ends.
Yeah.
Before editing.
Yep. You've been listening to Arcane Carolinas. Thanks for joining us. If you liked it, give us a rating, leave a comment. If you didn't like it, send us an email and tell us why. If you're not wrong, we'll try to fix it.
And if you're interested in award-winning speculative fiction, including science fiction, urban fantasy, and horror, find me, Michael G. Williams, at www.michaelgwilliamsbooks.com and check out Falstaff Books at falstaffbooks.com.
If you'd like to pick up some Arcane Carolinas merch, look at behind-the-scenes info, pictures, videos, stuff like that, all the things that get cut, check out arcanecarolinas.com, where you can get access to our Patreon, our Facebook, our Twitter, our Instagram, all that in one place, including the merch store. Buy a shirt.
Clothe your body.
Drape your body in our wares.
Be our living billboards.